Mr. President.
The senator from California.
Mr. President, I appreciate the remarks of my friend from Utah. And before he leaves the floor, Senator Hatch, I just want to say that we've worked very hard to put this bill together. It's been difficult. And, you know, if I was writing it, I would have written it differently. If you were writing it alone, you would have written it differently. But we've worked together long enough to know that we have to meet each other halfway.
The senator would yield. I want to personally thank her.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you.
Because this has not been an easy thing to do. And she has taken some unnecessary and unjust criticism for trying to do the art of the doable here in the United States Senate. And I just want to tell her it's been a privilege to work with her up till now, and I want to make sure that together and with the help of others, we get this bill through for the benefit of this country and the benefit of our highways. And I know how hard you and the distinguished senator from Oklahoma have worked on the highway bill. And I just want to say I have tremendous respect for you and appreciate your efforts in this regard, and want to just say kudos to you. Keep it up. We've got to get this done.
Senator Hatch, it means a lot to me, and I so remember that you set the pace for bipartisan cooperation when you worked with the late, great Senator Ted Kennedy, and people looked at the two of you and said, this is impossible. But you were able to find the common ground and build on it. And to me, I watched that. And Senator Inhofe and I have been able to do our best to also find the sweet spot where we could come together and work together. And I just wanted you to know that, that teamwork that I watched between you and Senator Kennedy from time to time on very important issues, it made an impression on me and certainly on the Senate and on the whole country.
Well, and if the Senate would yield again.
Of course.
I remember when we finally got together. It was way back in 1981.
That's right.
And from that point on, we found ways of coming together and getting things done that are monumental and landmark pieces of legislation. And there's no reason why we can't do that today. Let me just mention that on the Finance Committee, we have put out of the committee some, I think, almost 40 bills that are bipartisan, not just one Democrat or one Republican, but bipartisan in nature, not the least of which is the highway bill, funding rather. And I've just got to say that we're doing what we should do here. I think people feel good about it. I've had people come up and say, it's wonderful, we're having amendments again, and we're working together, and we're getting things done. And I attribute some of that to the distinguished senator from California and the work that she's doing here in the United States Senate. I personally appreciate working with you. Let's get this done, and I'll do everything in my power to help get it done.
Yes,
thanks so much.
And Senator Hatch, we're going to have some tough votes coming up, and some people aren't going to like this amendment or that amendment. And all I want to say is, let's keep our eye on what the prize is. And before you leave the floor, I just want to share with you a photo. Last week, on the California-Arizona border, a bridge collapsed. Now, this bridge had been rated structurally, do you remember the term? Obsolete, structurally obsolete. And because so much traffic was going between California and Arizona, so much more traffic than was anticipated. We are so fortunate there were no deaths involved. But this, to me, is the reason why we're doing what we're doing. We just can't sit back and, wait for some great, wonderful future promise to come down from the sky and say we've solved the funding problems. We want to find that solution. It's not at hand. So what the senator did, which was so important, and working with all members of the Finance Committee and across party lines with leadership and everybody else, is to put together sources of funding that he felt the Senate could live with. As it turned out, there were a couple of things were a bridge too far, talking of bridges, for a couple of members, and we're fixing those. We are fixing those, and it's good. But none of these pay-fors are delightful. They're all hard, but this is what we're trying to turn around. So I say to my colleagues on both sides, and I've said it to my own caucus over and over again, nobody is going to love every page of this bill because it's the nature of legislating. If we each could write our own bill, we'd love every page. We would be thrilled. We would, blow kisses at every page, but we don't write it ourselves. We have to step back and we have to allow the process to work. And yesterday, that process worked. It was tough, but we got more than 60 votes to begin work on a long-term surface transportation bill. And that bill is going to give certainty to our states. 3 years of certain funding, 6-year authorization with the hopes that in the coming months, we can figure out a good way to look at international tax reform and other ways to pay for the final 3 years. But let me be clear, it's been more than 10 years, am I right, David, that we've had more than a 2-year extension. So this is a 3-year bill, and it makes great improvements in the Environment and Public Works title. And we really did compromise, Senator Inhofe and I, and he and I really work well together on this in this area. So this cloture vote was so key, and it was so important to business and labor and all the people who know they don't want this to happen to them in their state, in their commute. How many more bridges have to fail before we recognize that we can't be patching up this highway trust fund little by little? It's just not working. I often say this, and I hope it doesn't bore people because I've said it a lot. If you wanted to buy a house and you found the house and you went to a really good banker and he or she looked at you and said, "I've got great news for you, Mr. or Mrs. America. We have checked your credit rating and your credit rating is great and we're going to give you a mortgage." And you say, "This is wonderful news." And then they say, "But it's only for 6 months or 5 months or 1 year." You're not going to buy that house. That's what we've been doing to our states and local entities. They can't build anything new. They can't make investments that are important because they don't have a guarantee that the funding will be there. Now, the beautiful thing about our funding system is it's federal, state, and local. And there's even sometimes some private money that comes in. So the federal government is the spark. I don't know, Mr. President, what your ratio is in Louisiana as far as whether it's 50-50 or 60-40. Maybe you could check it. In my state, it's about 50-50. We have 50% local state dollars to 50% federal dollars. Some of our states rely on the federal government for 90% of their transportation dollars. One state, 100%. So this isn't a question of having the states do this by themselves. They really can't do it by themselves. And it was President Eisenhower, a Republican president so many years ago, who said if we're going to be a strong country and we're going to protect our national security, we've got to be able to move people and move goods. And he took a tour across this great nation, and he came up with the notion of a highway trust fund and a national transportation infrastructure drive. Well, the EPW committee, which I am the ranking member of and Senator Inhofe chairs, we provide about 70% of the spending in this transportation bill. And we came together in a 20-0 vote and voted in favor of the DRIVE Act. This is going to support millions of jobs, not hundreds, not thousands, but millions of jobs across our great nation. And it will provide economic security, because if we don't do this and we wind up with a patch, believe me when I tell you, our states will shut down their programs because they just can't move forward. It's imperative that we act now. I agree with Senator Hatch, because we have come so far. And if we don't do this, we're looking at another extension. I know somebody told me it was a 34th extension. 34th extension. That's not right. We need to do our work, and the committees have done their work. I was happy to hear that Senator Brown now says that the transit funding is good. It is very good, as well as the highway funding. So I just want people to keep in mind the picture of this bridge. This bridge. You know what it means? That when there are goods moving through from Arizona to California or California to Arizona, the cars and trucks have to go 400 miles out of their way. 400 miles out of their way. The cost of that to our nation's business, the difficulty of that to those who drive the trucks and the vans. I will say, this link is closed indefinitely. Mr. President, that is a terrible thing to say. They don't have a plan to fix this because it is so complex. And we need the funding so that they can, because we have emergency funding in this bill, $100 million per year to look at situations like this and come in and help. How many more bridges have to collapse before we do our job? We cannot be economically competitive when truckers delivering goods have to drive 400 miles out of the way to get goods from one state to another. Here's the fact. 61,300 bridges are structurally deficient in America. 50% of our roads are in less than good condition. We have no excuses. We need to move forward. I want to show you the list of supporters of our work and just implore those members, those 38 or so members who voted no to go to this bill, I ask you to take a look at these groups and tell me in your heart of hearts how you can say no to them. These are hardworking people. They're Republicans, they're Democrats, they're independents, they're people of every political stripe. The American Highway Users Alliance, the American Public Transportation Association, the American Road and Transportation Builders, Society of Civil Engineers, Trucking Association, equipment distributors, general contractors, equipment manufacturers, metropolitan planning organizations, asphalt pavement association. I have 4 of these charts, Mr. President. These are the people that want us to vote yes. National Association of Counties. I started off as a county supervisor. They know the bridges and the roads are in disrepair. The National Association of Manufacturers, the National Association of Truck Stop Operators, the National Governors Association, the League of Cities, the Ready Mix Concrete people, the Sandstone and Gravel people, the Independent Drivers, the Portland Cement Association, the Retail Leaders Association, and here's another one, the last one, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Now, I ask you, when do we see the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the International Union of Operating Engineers, the Laborers International Union of North America, the United Brotherhood of Carpenters, when do we see all these on the same side? The answer? When we write a highway bill. America is coming together around our efforts. We should be unanimous, even though there are parts of the bill that I don't like and you don't like. And colleagues, we cannot have a perfect bill. It's an imperfect bill in an imperfect world. But unless we wrote every word ourselves, we would never be thrilled with every provision. And I'll finish up. The AAA, remember those people we call when we break down? The AAA says, pass a bill. They're tired of coming out to start up cars that aren't going well because they got caught in some kind of sinkhole. The U.S. Conference of Mayors, United Brotherhood of, I said that. The American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and I want to say at first the Mothers Against Drunk Driving opposed this bill, now they support it, and the American Council of Engineering Companies. So I've showed you the list, this is just partial, of people who are begging us to pass this bill. And you know, Democrats stood here and we called on the Republicans to please come up with a bill, and they did. And there were reasons to say we didn't love it. And we sat down and we worked hard. And I have to say, Senator McConnell and his staff, my staff, Senator Inhofe's staff, Senator Durbin and his staff, we've been working hard. We're still working to get more votes. We need more votes. We need this to happen. Today, my plea is that the clock is ticking. We have 8 days, colleagues, 8 days before the Highway Trust Fund goes bust. Guess what? We can solve this problem. Get a strong bill that increases funding in the first year by 6%, after that a couple of percent a year for 3 years, and it scores well. It doesn't add a penny to the deficit. I'm so glad we're moving forward, but, you know, we need more support. So here's my last plea to everybody who might possibly be listening, maybe my relatives, but in addition to that, anyone who might be listening, there are going to be amendments that I don't like, that you don't like. Could we try to keep our eye on the prize? This is the prize. We don't want this happening in any place in this country. It brings devastation. And therefore, we have a good bill before us. Is it perfect? No. Are the pay-fors perfect? No. Are we continue to approve it? Yes. Can we always do more later? Yes. Let's say yes together, Republicans, Democrats. Let's deliver this for the American people. I thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the floor.